I now suspected at least 4 doctors were involved in the cover-up of Mama's injury in the operating room. I was standing face to face with one of the doctors. I didn't know if the other doctors were still on the CCU floor, so I had to act quickly. I suspected Emerson Hospital had already started covering their tracks. How do I make a doctor reveal information he is motivated to conceal? I devised a strategy to do just that. I walked down the hallway to Mama's room. The CCU floor was quiet. The nurse at the station was surprised to see me and curiously said, "Oh, you're back." I didn't answer. This wasn't a social visit. The 3 doctors in the CYA family meeting knew what happened in the operating room. How many other doctors in the operating room were involved in the cover-up? Mama didn't casually end up on life support. There had to be a precipitating event or events. I stood outside room 404 and looked through the sliding glass door to get a big picture perspective and keep my emotions balanced. This was a battle of logic versus immense hurt. I saw the ventilator again. It was hard to miss. There was one physical difference in Mama's appearance that stood out immediately. I didn't see any special equipment in the room. I noticed an IV pole on the right side of the bed with solution bags. Maybe there was a medication mix-up. I made a note to take pictures of the solution bags. The sliding door was slightly open. Mama wouldn't settle down. I could feel it in my soul. There's something Mama wanted me to know. I can't explain how I knew this, but I knew. I was ready for the showdown with Mama's CCU doctor. I went to the nurse's station and told the nurse I wanted to see Mama's doctor. I didn't add thank you and please. The time for pleasantries had long passed. Mama's doctor arrived a few minutes later. We talked in the CCU hallway in front of Mama's room. Mama's room was on my left, and the doctor and nurse's station was on my right. The CCU doctor stood directly in front of me. I started the conversation by introducing myself, but he already seemed to know me. Interesting. I explained the rules. Number 1, I expected a phone call if there was any change whatsoever in Mama's condition, regardless of the time and how many calls were required. Number 2, I told CCU Dr. 2 that I didn't want any medical discussions in Mama's room. This included discussions among providers and with me and my family. All medical discussions were to be held in the hallway or the conference room outside of Mama's audible range. I only allowed positive energy in Mama's room. Number 3, I told CCU Dr. 2 that I expected him and all providers to treat Mama like he would treat his mother. CCU Dr. 2 started talking about his mother. He drifted into a conversation about his wife and his wife's profession. I let CCU Dr. 2 talk uninterrupted. This wasn't idle chit-chat. I was building a profile. After breaking the ice, I asked CCU Dr. 2 what happened in the operating room, and he immediately tensed up and didn't answer the question. Instead, he told me Mama was being prepped for a colonoscopy later that morning. Emerson Hospital squandered another opportunity to tell the truth. I now suspect at least 4 doctors are involved in the cover-up. I switched gears. I asked CCU Dr. 2 how much blood Mama lost in the operating room, and he said none. I said none, and he repeated none. I was stunned. I told everyone that Mama was bleeding out. I needed clarification. I asked if Mama had any bleeding episodes since leaving the emergency department. He said no. I was confused. I thought back to the waiting area. 3 things bothered me. Why would the gastroenterologist leave the operating room with Mama bleeding out to talk to me? Why didn't the gastroenterologist have any blood on his scrubs? Why was the gastroenterologist panicked? Now I know answers to the first 2 questions. Whatever happened in the operating room didn't directly involve the gastroenterologist. That's why he left the operating room to visit with me. I still didn't understand why the gastroenterologist was panicked. I thought about the sheer absurdity of figuring this out myself, but I had to keep my emotions in check to think logically. I didn't say it aloud, but I told Mama, I got you. I'll figure it out. What could it be? I asked if Mama had a heart attack or a heart event. CCU Dr. Tu said no. I was struggling to put the puzzle together. My next words were, transfer Mama to Massachusetts General Hospital. I was tired of Emerson Hospital's games. CCU Dr. Tu hesitated for a few seconds and then left for the doctor's station to call Massachusetts General Hospital. Every time I looked over, CCU Dr. Tu's mouth was moving. I thought, good. I hope Massachusetts General Hospital was drilling him because the story I was getting was full of holes. After about 15 minutes, CCU Dr. Tu hung up the phone and said Massachusetts General Hospital couldn't take Mama because they were at capacity. My heart sank. I'm right back where I was before the call. I'm an engineer, not a doctor. I didn't have enough medical knowledge to know what additional questions to ask. I needed a new strategy. I kept saying, think, 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 think. Snap. I got an idea. The admitting CCU doctor in the emergency department was arrogant. CCU Dr. Tu was different. He was brimming with confidence, so I decided to exploit this. I thought about something Mama did to us when she wasn't sure if we were being truthful. I innocently asked CCU Dr. Tu if any other CCU doctors were working. He seemed taken aback, but he picked up on the subtle dig straight away. He said yes. I said, Mama's trademark expression, and turned to my left and looked at Mama for about 10 seconds. I turned back and asked, how many other CCU doctors are working? As he responded, I said, and turned to look in Mama's room again. After about 10 seconds, I turned back. As innocently as possible, I said, I don't mean to insult you, but... Two things. As soon as someone says they don't mean to insult you, an insult is coming, and they mean it. I said, I don't mean to insult you, but I don't think you have the skills to care for Mama. CCU Dr. Tu was furious that I insulted him by suggesting another doctor on the floor was better than him, and his temper got the best of him. CCU Dr. Tu was going to prove to me how good he was. He started telling me what happened in the operating room. He started talking quickly, so I had to keep up. I wasn't prepared for what CCU Dr. Tu was about to reveal. CCU Dr. Tu said, Mama's systolic blood pressure suddenly dropped to 60 in the operating room. My heart sank. I was about to rip into CCU Dr. Tu, but couldn't get a word in. CCU Dr. Tu continued talking briskly and told me when Mama's systolic blood pressure suddenly dropped, Mama was pumped with one blood pressure. A second blood pressure was added. A third blood pressure was added. And a fourth blood pressure was added. 4 blood pressures. I tried to interrupt and tell CCU Dr. Tu that the systolic blood pressure reading in the operating room was wrong, but CCU Dr. Tu talked over me. He was PISSED. He said that when Mama arrived at the CCU, he was told Mama's systolic blood pressure was 60 and that he was the one who knew Mama's systolic blood pressure reading from the cuff was wrong. This is at least the 4th time Mama's systolic blood pressure suddenly dropped by 50 plus or 70 plus points. CCU Dr. Tu finally stopped talking. I quietly asked CCU Dr. Tu how he knew, and he responded with 5 words. I just looked at her. Those 5 words haunt me every day. That was the secret Emerson Hospital was hiding from me. I should have transferred Mama to Massachusetts General Hospital. I struggle with that guilt every single day. I will never forgive myself. CCU Dr. 2 suddenly stopped his outburst. His temper had gotten the better of him, and he realized he had unwittingly revealed a secret. CCU Dr. 2 realized the implications of what he said. He stared at me, and I stared back, emotionless, as though I didn't understand the significance of his words. But I knew. I don't know how I remained standing. I figured out why Mama was on life support. Mama had a massive, massive, massive stroke. Reality hit me hard. The 3 doctors in the family meeting blatantly lied. Mama was likely not going to wake up without divine intervention. We needed a miracle. Mama wasn't resting comfortably like we were told in that family meeting minutes before. Mama was likely unresponsive and in a coma. Mama was seriously injured and likely fatally injured. I knew it was grim, but Mama never gave up on me, and I wasn't about to give up on Mama. CCU Dr. 2 had a dilemma. The next step was apparent, and he knew it. CCU Dr. 2 knew Mama's systolic blood pressure wasn't 60, so the obvious question is, what is Mama's correct systolic blood pressure? We stood in the middle of the CCU floor staring at each other. CCU Dr. 2 asked me for permission to get Mama's correct systolic blood pressure via her femoral artery. I consented. A nurse accompanied CCU Dr. 2 into Mama's room. I walked to the end of the hallway, stood in the CCU conference room doorway, and waited for the results. When I saw them emerge from Mama's room, I walked down the hallway and asked CCU Dr. 2 for Mama's correct systolic blood pressure. His response was well above 200. I turned my head to the left to look at Mama to hide my disgust with that response. I turned back to CCU Dr. 2 as though I had forgotten what he said and asked again. His response was the same, well above 200. I dropped it. I felt Emerson Hospital had already started covering their tracks. According to the American Heart Association, a systolic blood pressure reading exceeding 180 milliliters of mercury requires immediate medical attention. This is a hypertensive crisis where organ damage and strokes occur. At this level, the instructions from the American Heart Association are extraordinarily clear. Call 911 immediately. Emerson Hospital raised Mama's systolic blood pressure well above 180 milliliters of mercury. Emerson Hospital then lied about it and tried to cover it up. It took 4 requests for Mama's medical records, but I finally found where Emerson Hospital buried Mama's correct systolic blood pressure a year after Mama passed. This is what Emerson Hospital did to Mama.